You're listening to Filmmaking Giants. Today's filmmaker works at the opposite end of cinema from explanation. Lynne Ramsay does not tell you what to think, and she does not walk you through what happens. She places you inside a state, inside a sensation, inside a wound. Her films are built from fragments, images, sounds, gestures, memories that surface without warning, and together they form something closer to lived experience than to narrative design. Ramsay is a director of pure sensory cinema, where meaning arrives through feeling first, and language only later, if at all. Ramsay's work is often described as minimalist, but that word can be misleading. Her films are not sparse because there is nothing there. They are sparse because she removes anything that isn't essential. What remains is dense, compressed, and emotionally volatile. She understands that the most powerful experiences are not always the loudest ones. Trauma rarely announces itself. It seeps. It interrupts. It repeats. Ramsay builds her cinema to behave that way. Born in Glasgow in 1969, Ramsay emerged from a background shaped by working-class life, social realism, and the quiet violence of environments that wear people down slowly. But unlike many filmmakers associated with realism, Ramsay was never interested in documentary-style observation or sociological explanation. She was interested in subjectivity, how the world feels when filtered through a damaged or vulnerable mind. Her films don't show you events so much as the imprint events leave behind. From the beginning, Ramsay showed an unusual confidence in trusting the audience. Her early short films already demonstrated her instinct for telling stories without conventional dialogue or structure. She learned quickly that cinema's most powerful tool is not plot, but association. One image placed next to another can create meaning that no line of dialogue could equal. A sound can trigger a memory. A cut can reveal a truth. Her first feature, Ratcatcher, announced her sensibility with devastating clarity. Set in 1970s Glasgow during a garbage strike, the film could have been a straightforward social realist portrait of poverty. Ramsay does something much braver. She filters the world through the perspective of a child. The film is not about policy or economics, it's about atmosphere. About the feeling of being young, trapped, confused, and quietly haunted. In Ratcatcher, garbage piling up in the streets is not just background detail. It becomes a metaphor for emotional accumulation, the things no one deals with, the grief no one names. Ramsay films dirt, water, animals, light, and decay with poetic attention. The film contains moments of startling beauty, and those moments don't cancel out the despair, they coexist with it. Beauty still intrudes, and that its presence can make pain sharper, not softer. This balance between beauty and brutality is one of Ramsay's defining traits. She refuses to sentimentalize suffering, but she also refuses to strip life of grace. Her films don't argue that life is only misery. They argue that misery and tenderness often occupy the same space. Her second feature, Morvern Callar, pushed this approach even further inward. The story begins with a shocking act, but Ramsay refuses to treat that act as a mystery to be solved or a trauma to be explained. Instead, she follows Morvern's interior journey, her detachment, her strange calm, her refusal to behave the way a narrative expects. Ramsay does not moralize Morvern's choices, she observes them. She lets the audience sit with discomfort. What makes Morvern Callar remarkable is its refusal to psychologize. Ramsay doesn't explain why Morvern does what she does. She doesn't diagnose. She doesn't redeem. She presents a person who responds to catastrophe not with breakdown, but with withdrawal and drift. That drift becomes the film's structure. Scenes feel disconnected, floating. Music arrives not as commentary, but as emotional oxygen. Morvern moves through the world as if partially numb, partially searching, and Ramsay respects that state. She does not force clarity where none exists. This is a key Ramsay principle. Confusion is a legitimate human experience. Cinema does not need to correct it. Ramsay's use of sound is central to this philosophy. She is one of the great sound designers in narrative cinema, even when she is not credited as such. Her films often minimize dialogue, but they are never quiet. They are filled with texture. Footsteps, breathing, environmental noise, sudden bursts of music, the hum of machinery, the echo of memory. Sound in Ramsay's work is psychological. It intrudes, it overwhelms, it vanishes. It behaves like trauma behaves. Nowhere is this more evident than in We Need to Talk About Kevin, a film that could easily have become a didactic statement about evil, parenting, or responsibility. Ramsay refuses all of that. She builds the film as a mosaic of memory, guilt, and dread. Time is fractured. The film moves back and forth without warning, because that is how memory works when you are haunted. You don't recall events in order. You relive sensations. Ramsay's central insight in Kevin is that trauma reorganizes perception. The protagonist cannot experience the present without the past bleeding into it. Ordinary sounds become unbearable. Ordinary colors, especially red, become loaded. The world feels hostile, accusatory. Ramsay visualizes this through aggressive editing, jarring sound transitions, and an almost tactile use of color. Red stains the film not as symbol, but as residue. You feel it before you interpret it. What's crucial is that Ramsay refuses to give the audience moral comfort. She doesn't turn the story into a simple question of blame. She doesn't provide psychological explanations that allow viewers to distance themselves. She forces you to remain inside ambiguity, the ambiguity of love, resentment, responsibility, and grief. The film is not asking, who is at fault? It's asking, what does it feel like to live after something unforgivable? This refusal to offer answers is often mistaken for evasiveness. In reality, it's ethical restraint. Ramsay understands that some experiences cannot be resolved into lessons without doing violence to their truth. Her most recent widely discussed work, You Were Never Really Here, strips cinema down even further. The film follows a man who commits acts of extreme violence, but Ramsay refuses to stage those acts as spectacle. She often cuts away at the moment of impact. She shows aftermath instead of action. Blood on a wall, a body slumped out of frame, the sound of a struggle without the image. Ramsay is not interested in choreography. She is interested in consequence. The film is built around a man who is already broken. His violence is not empowering. It is mechanical. It is compulsive. It is bound to trauma he cannot escape. Ramsay refuses the fantasy of catharsis. Killing does not heal him. Saving others does not redeem him. The film moves through his mind like a fever dream. Memory fragments, hallucinations, suicidal ideation, moments of connection that feel almost imaginary. Again, sound is everything. The film's soundscape is oppressive. Music surges and cuts out. Silence arrives suddenly. The viewer is constantly destabilized, never allowed to settle into genre expectations. Ramsay is dismantling the revenge thriller from the inside. She keeps the shell of the genre, but removes its pleasure. What makes Ramsay extraordinary is her control. Her films are not chaotic. They are meticulously constructed to feel chaotic. Every cut, every sound cue, every withheld image is deliberate. Ramsay is a precision filmmaker masquerading as an intuitive one. She knows exactly what she is doing, and she does it with ruthless focus. Her editing is especially important. Ramsay edits for sensation, not continuity. She is willing to jump time, space, and logic if it preserves emotional truth. In her films, continuity of feeling matters more than continuity of action. This is why her work feels so immediate. You don't observe it from a distance, you experience it. Ramsay's performances are similarly controlled. She directs actors away from expressiveness and toward internalization. Characters often say very little. Their faces carry the weight. Small gestures become monumental. A blink, a flinch, a refusal to look. Ramsay understands that trauma is not theatrical. It is often quiet, repetitive, and exhausting. Her influence can be seen across contemporary cinema, especially in films that prioritize mood, subjective experience, and sound-driven storytelling. But few filmmakers match her discipline. Many imitate the surface, fragmentation, silence, abstraction, without understanding the emotional rigor beneath it. Ramsay never fragments for style alone. She fragments because that is how her characters perceive the world. As a craft lesson, Ramsay offers something demanding. Trust the audience, but be precise. Remove exposition, but replace it with sensory clarity. Let sound do narrative work. Let images carry memory. Accept that discomfort is not a failure of storytelling, but often a sign of honesty. Ramsay also challenges a deep assumption in cinema, that understanding equals resolution. Her films argue the opposite. Sometimes understanding deepens pain. Sometimes the goal is not to solve, but to endure. That's why Ramsay belongs among filmmaking giants. She redefined what psychological cinema could look like. She showed that narrative could be built from sensation, that violence could be depicted without fetish, that trauma could be honored without explanation, and that cinema could be both brutal and compassionate without compromise. You've been listening to Filmmaking Giants. Today we explored Lynne Ramsay, visual minimalism, sound-driven storytelling, and pure sensory cinema. Next, we'll turn to Paul Thomas Anderson, American mythmaking, character gravity, and scenes that feel like entire novels compressed into moments.